As it said, I'm Joe McReynolds. I'm currently chair and president of Abbeyfield Canada, and have been involved in the sector for too many years. I think I taught my first homemaking course back in 1972 at Georgian College, and have been linked to the sectors ever since in one way or another. Just mention I spent 7 years as the CEO of the Ontario Community Support Association, which is the organization that represents the not-for-profit sector in the home care and community support sector in Ontario, etc. I've been involved with Abbeyfield closely in the last 7 years. Before that, I was involved when we began the Abbeyfield home here in Caledon, Ontario, about 25 years ago. So a bit of a history. And I'll turn it over to Rhonda at the moment. And Rhonda, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi. Well, first thing I'd like to do is also introduce Peter Randall. Peter is on our board of directors.
Sorry, I missed that.
No, that's no problem.
Peter is he's also the chair of our development and growth committee, which his list gets pretty big all the time. I live in Durham, Ontario, which is not the region of Durham. I live in a rural area. I'm visiting Abbeyfield, Durham today because I also don't have any power at my house. And the happy story that I'll share with you right now is I've been a volunteer at this house for about, 15 years or so. Been working with Abbeyfield Canada for the last 3. And with this hydro cut off, I moved my dad into Abbeyfield on Monday night. And it was one of those things that a lot of people, when you're talking to folks about Abbeyfield, they say, oh, not quite ready, not sure, happy where I am. But I said, no, this is not going to work. So I moved him here, and he's been playing euchre and chatting and having a great time since he came in. So
Great.
I like it when things happen like that. Yeah. So again, we have 19 houses across the country right now. Ontario, Saskatchewan, there's 2, Alberta, and the majority of our houses in British Columbia. I'm going to let, I don't know if Peter wants to say anything. Just introduce yourself, Peter.
There, oops, I'll do it again.
No.
Sorry. Oh, Peter, we're back and forth. Muting, unmuting.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm in out here in Niagara. I often say sunny Niagara, and it is sunny Niagara, but it's quite windy. But after yesterday, who can complain, right? Yeah. So I was a former 2-term elected politician. So certainly reading with and on things like planning committees and development committees and things like that for municipalities. So reading some of your things about water and sewers and things like that, I could certainly jump in on those conversations. But as I say, I'm a director for Abbeyfield and the chair of the Planning and Development and Growth Committee, actually, what we call it. And so very interested in your story and very interested in making your acquaintances and seeing where we can go forward with this, because there certainly is some commonalities and some reasons to work together for sure. So I'll let Joe take it from there.
Okay, I'm going to do a share of the screen.
Thank you.
Well, I'm trying to. But
sorry, while you're doing that, Peter, I didn't realize you're on. I ended up having to go on my phone, so I can only see 1 or 2 people here and keep the screen in front of me that we're talking to. So my apologies there.
Not at all, Joe. Not at all.
Okay, so I'm going to run through a dozen or so slides here, and certainly Rhonda and Peter can move in at any point. I'm doing it from my phone, so I hope I can follow along pretty well. So you've heard of Abbeyfield. We've been in business, as you can see, for the thing about 40 years. It's obviously a very small scale model for shared senior accommodation. And it really focused on a solution for housing and for support for those of us who are aging and are beginning to feel the limitations of aging in our lives. So that's in general what the home is about. We move on. Well, Abbeyfield has been around since 1954, 57 area. It started in England as because of a retired colonel from a army who recognized in his community that there were older adults who were alone and starting to get isolated and not linked in the community, and really could, in his mind, could really benefit from sharing accommodation. And since that time, it's been following the principles that you see before you. Anyway, it's based on, as I said, helping elderly persons who are suffering from loneliness or insecurity and who need care and companionship and support in their daily lives. We believe that the older adult plays a very important role in families and friends and communities. And, you know, as senior myself, sitting in a community where there's a number of older adults living in this community, I watch every day as people get somewhat more detached from their community because of their limitations. We believe that the community really has a responsibility to help the older adults find a secure situation in their lives. So we'll move on.
Well, I will, I promise.
Our homes are, you know, really in the neighborhood of 10 to 16 older adults, and we provide them with an affordable and an independent lifestyle.
Can you see it now?
Yep, you're up there.
Good.
I think. Yep. I want to stress that we try to keep it very affordable. The range, I think, is between somewhere about $1,700 to about $2,300 now a month. And that includes all accommodation, all meals, and basically everything in most cases except their internet. And that's the case here. So mainly it's often focused on individuals who have lower or moderate income, those individuals who often can't afford the retirement home costs that the commercial sector provides. So small scale, we believe they need to be small scale in order to maintain that sense of family in a home. They're all charitable, not-for-profit organizations. And this is a big one, and this is one that you will deal with if you proceed to plan. They're volunteer, governed, and operated. In order to keep our costs down, currently the boards really operate the homes. So it's a very, very committed job to be a director on an Abbeyfield home. Everybody's provided with 3 meals a day. In most cases, those meals are prepared and served within the home to the residents. And moving on.
Okay.
This is just a very quick. You can see that the homes are around the world, mainly in Commonwealth countries, as you might notice there. There's probably over 400 homes now in existence of the Abbeyfield model. Moving on. So what do we address? We address loneliness. You know, it's often a critical issue in our residents. They live in the community. They are not necessarily always able to get out. They start losing their ability to drive often. They lose friends, families. I'm heading to 2 funerals tomorrow. So, I mean, these are, you know, typical often of an older senior in our community. So we address that loneliness, the companionship, nutrition, autonomy, the ability, you know, one of the big issues that happens in long-term care homes, and I used to be the director of the charitable and municipal homes in Ontario, they lose their autonomy. They lose their ability to make decisions for themselves, which is a little bit different than independence, which is ability to do things. But often that happens. They're provided in all cases, pretty much the individuals have their own suites. So although they live in a congregate setting, they have their own kind of living area. Here in Caledon, each room is equipped with about 350 square feet and a fully accessible washroom in each room. So it's a place you can live, but then they share, obviously, coming out to share meals, share the library, share events, etc. And they obviously continue to enjoy life. Moving on.
Is it there?
Yes, yes, there. So seniors aging in place, you know, we want to see our role as across the country as helping create those housing supplies, relieving the existing stock. That's one of the issues that we keep hearing from communities. There's a homelessness issue too. And of course, with the pandemic, it's really been very much an issue. Interesting enough, we've only had 2 cases of COVID in our homes during the pandemic. And that's obviously because of the ability to adjust and respond to the individual needs. In our home in Caledon, I can speak for a moment, you know, we had about 4 weeks where residents basically stayed in their rooms, but our rooms are set up in a way that they're each of the 6 rooms, 2 pods, 6 rooms shared breakfast. We laid it out so they could come out and get their own breakfast, and then we served the meals in the rooms. But for the most part, it was much easier to apply pandemic measures of prevention, et cetera, in the homes. And it was a very positive experience, if you could call having the pandemic positive at all. Moving on. So the designs. In the past, our designs have always been usually a one structure and one building, but we're starting to see the development of a variety of styles now in the homes. And we'll go through a few of them in a minute here of some of the ones that are under development at the moment. But what we're trying to display in this is that Abbeyfields can be incorporated into a larger building as well as standalone. So moving on. So here's where the homes are in Canada. I don't need to go through them. You can see that there's a number in BC. I think there's 11 there. A few across the prairies and 4 in Ontario. These are the existing homes that have the residents in them at the moment in Canada. And we'll move on. Some active projects under development in Ontario. We have a project in, I'm going to let Rhonda speak to these projects because she's dealing with them on a daily basis. Are they okay with that, Rhonda?
Sure, I can do that. So most of this activity is happening in Ontario, although there is a few things spinning up in Saskatoon and in Alberta at the moment. Kitchener is a new 8th floor multi-leveled machine that's just under construction. The main floor are going to be townhouses. The 3rd floor will be in Abbeyfield. The 4th floor may also be in Abbeyfield, depending on the needs. Women Living Together is another organization kind of doing a co-housing piece. They've got several apartments in that place and then a penthouse. So all focus on seniors. The developer has made this really a mission for him, and in that, 1, that it's seniors, and 2, that Abbeyfield's included in that. So it's been a long-term, it's quite a project. Lakefield has also been a group of volunteers have been working for the last 8 years. They have their property. They should be, again, shoveling the ground later this spring. They're going to be a house on its own with 16 units. They've also made a relationship with Trent University, and they've got the geriatric students, a couple of apartments that they can rent there. So So the Lakefield becomes a bit of a lab for them. And then with their volunteer work at the house, they get to learn a lot and support the house and the work. Ottawa, happy place. We have an existing house in Ottawa for almost, I guess, almost 30 years now. It's just 10 units. These groups, other that I'm listing here, are new groups. The Polonia group is a group of women who want housing for their Polish community. The Flow Seniors is an organization that has been operating for a couple of years now, providing food and services and transportation for seniors in the Afro-Caribbean group, and now they want to include an Abbeyfield in that project. The Bronson Center is right in central Ontario, central Ottawa. Currently, it's a community hub of an old Catholic high school. They're planning on building a 28-floor housing situation there, and then 2 or 3 of those floors will be Abbeyfields. And Riverside is another group in Ottawa looking at Old South Ottawa is the area they're looking at. Again, they've been involved for a couple of years and looking at properties all around. Also, Wingham, very rural area. Caledon too is where the town of Caledon said, oh my gosh, you guys are doing such a great job. Let's do more. So they're looking at opportunities there. And Picton is their newest group. Very interested in moving forward with an Abbeyfield project with the support of their municipality.
Good. And let's just take a quick look at a few, these are, as you can see, established across. We don't have much in the Maritimes at the moment. We would love to get that because it fits their culture very well, the type of style we're looking at. And now we'll just look quickly through a few examples here. This will give you a bit of an example of what's going on. This is the Ottawa House. As Rhonda says, it's an older house. There was a manse for one of the churches. It's been converted and added to, and it's very comfy, family-like setting that in downtown Ottawa. Next one would be, I get my thing working here too, the Colonial one, which I think you can read there for yourself. The Polish community has been quite interested in taking on a project in Ottawa. The Afro-Canadian one flows in Riverside. And this is the model of the Kitchener project, 56 Weber West. As you can see, it's right downtown in Kitchener. And as described, it's going to be a variety of commercial Abbeyfields, shared living, and accommodation, penthouse on the top is the plan that the developer has. So each floor will have about 14 residents in it, according to his plans at the moment. Here's Lakeside. They were an interesting one because they started with not much money, probably no money. They got their committee together and got excited about it. They were able to raise about 50,000, I think, maybe more. I heard a different figure recently, so I want to not be quoted on that one. But they raised money from a community bond. They had members of the community invest in a community bond. Community bond is a registered bond that's now available and can pay interest back to the investors. It's regulated by the Securities Commission. So it's, I'm not sure this one was as formal as that. Anyway, they bought the land with this. They severed an acre of the 3 acres they had. They were able to then sell that property, that 1 acre, and actually ended up not only retiring any mortgage they had, but they also paid off their investors. And I think they have about $250,000 ready to go into the actual building now. So they're quite a good success story, quite close to you, actually, in some ways. This is the Bronson Center that was reference. It will have it's going to be, how many stories is that in there?
28 floors.
28 floors.
Plus
is going-
another small building because they're community hubs. They've got a new for Elizabeth Fry and and YMCA and stuff moving into this other small building on the right.
It was a kind of a settlement home for many years, and it's now looking at moving into this. So they will have accommodation in the public as well. They have 3 or 4 Abbeyfields within it. And moving on, the next one is, it looks like it's the one in Duncan, BC. You can get a sense of the nature of the house. Now, Durham. I'll let Rhonda speak to this one because this is her home as she's sitting in it at the moment.
Sure. So Abbeyfield Durham has 12 units on the main floor and an additional 3 units and community space and laundry in the lower floor. It is rural. The town is more of a it's like a village more than a town. But from this spot, you can walk easily with 1 block down to the library in downtown.
So what's the size of Durham population-wise? You know, Rhonda?
I would make it up right now.
Yeah, okay. So we're moving on to Caledon, where I am. This is the courtyard at the Caledon one, a purpose-built Abbeyfield. Has 12 units in it. Each unit, as I said, is separate with their fully accessible washroom. And not much more I can say about that one. Our land is actually leased from the town. So it's on a 100-year lease. So that's where we're going to go. Now Peter's ready to answer any questions you have, and we'll all chip in. So I turn it back to you, Joanne, and you can direct, or we can try to respond to any questions that people have.
Yeah, so the floor now is open. And if you would like to ask a question, maybe you could raise your hand. I believe there's a raise hand there at the bottom of the screen. And then when you're acknowledged, if you would unmute yourself and ask your question. And sometimes it might be dialogue. So if more than one person is unmuted at a time, it wouldn't be unusual.
There isn't a raise hand, so maybe we can.
You don't have a raise hand? Oh, it's under React.
Oh, okay.
Look in React, you'll see it there, I think.
There we go. It is there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dawn. Yes,
You're on mute though, Don.
You know, can I just say that must have been an amazing presentation? There are no questions.
I put my hand up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it goes too
I
fast.
apologize. You first, Ivo.
You know, I feel unloved. Anyways, Joe, and Peter, question for you is, can you give us a little bit of give you a little bit of background. We're scouting for land and sites here in Scugog, and we found one in Blackstock, which is an old high school that hasn't been used in 12 years. And it's about 2.5 acres, but it's on septic, but it is on town water. So we're limited what we can do there. But the question is, so I heard about the community bond, but do you have any typical timelines? What do you go through? How do you go through to actually, before you put the shovel in the ground?
Oh boy, you started off with the $10 million question.
Nobody said this would be easy.
Yeah, so there is no good answer to that. Every situation is unique, and the timeline is difficult to force, right? This is not building a single family unit home where you're sort of saying, you know, I'll put it up in 2 weeks and fit it out in the next 2 months, right? And that, sort of fitting something out is the easy part. Typically groups start with very little capital, as Joe sort of alluded to, talking about the Lakefield situation where they're getting shovel in the ground, right? And, they sort of floundered a bit until they sort of got better leadership and then sort of hit the ground running more at that point, right? It's that capital to get things up and going, right? And looking at the land, right? How would you purchase that? Where does your money come from? So the structure of your people and the passion of your group and the impetus to fundraise and things like that, these dramatically affect things, right? And what one group can accomplish in 2 months, take for example that Picton group that we were just talking about, very, very active, seem to get something moving all the time and something happening. So it wouldn't surprise me if they could hit a timeline that was, half the time of somebody else's, right? There are so many things in terms of zoning lands, and obviously if you're talking about it was a former school, then it's already institutional zoning, and you have to read the exact text of the plan, but to see what is allowed, but there may or may not be needed an amendment, right? You talk about water and no sewers. Well, that's a good start because you've got the municipal water already there, and it already was a school, right? So you've got services to the site, hydro, et cetera, et cetera. Septic on 2.5 acres can certainly be dealt with. It's something to deal with, but it's not anything that can't be overcome, right? I'm sitting right next to on my farm here. I'm sitting right next to a couple of subdivisions that were built right next to my farm here that have sewers and no water, right? And if you went a little bit further down the road into Welland, there would be the opposite with water and no sewers, right? So we're getting a lot more creative, and there's a lot less things sort of holding us back. They all can be overcome, and a septic bed is not that's what I have on my farm here. It's not a problematic. Now you're a very different situation where you're dealing with many people living there, but that's no more, a school would probably have more intensive use of a septic bed on a site than a senior's home would, really, when you think about it, because of the number of students versus units, et cetera, right? So not a good answer to your question. And Rhonda and Joe can jump in, but what I would say is caution on, promising quick to anyone. It is not quick. When you're dealing with CMHC, you're going to deal with a number of organizations. You're going to be fundraising. You're going to be, dealing with plan amendments and municipalities and many things. So, it's better to, if you were going to think 2 years, it would be better to think 4 years. Let's put it that way, or whatever. Rhonda, Joe, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I'd just say that, Peter, that's what we're working on with the toolkit to a certain extent, isn't it? To lay out for a group like this exactly what the processes would be and what our thoughts are around how long it would take and what the steps are. So we're looking at developing a toolkit that really has maybe 3 or 4 phases in it that would help a community organization move through those phases. So the first one becomes, getting your board in place, getting that incorporated, getting a sense of what the need is and where you're going in a community. And then the next one is probably looking at some of the land and what is the land and what are going to be the actual things that have to be overcome to get the property in a place that could be built on. Planning, funding. I mean, we know that from Abbeyfield Canada, we know that roughly you can get probably up to around 70% from if you're approved by Canada Mortgage and Housing for construction. But that still really means you have to raise a fair amount of money in different ways locally. Also, we are, at Abbeyfield Canada, we have a benefactor who's been helping out with the retirement of mortgages in the past. So we're really down to only 4 houses with mortgages at this point. Those things are there, but the upfront is really where we're at. And I go back to what Joanne said at the beginning. The government is not yet in a position where it's really accessing us the capital that we need to get going on things. I have had discussions with the government, with the province anyway, on this issue. They say they like the model. They think it's missing in the current services that help older adults in our community, but they haven't come forward with a funding model yet that would help us in that. And as you probably know, although I don't think I mentioned it, none of the houses are funded operationally. Well, I one exception in Toronto where they have a rent near the income arrangement with the city of Toronto. But beyond that, all the operation, it's really a social enterprise, the Abbeyfield model. It's built on the fees that are paid by the residents from an operating point of view. And as I said, we've been able to keep those as very affordable in the I would say in the moment at about 2,000 to 2,300 would cover off the majority of houses across Canada.
Okay.
Sorry, I went on in a bit of a different area there. Rhonda, do you had anything to add, or?
Well, just that, you know, the not having the cash obviously slows everything down, and we don't want anything given to us. We would take if it was given to us, but all we want is a good investment. Have someone to invest, some government to say, here is 1,500 whatever, and you can get started and then start paying us back when you're able to do that. That is all we have ever hoped for, aside from other fundraising we're doing. And that's our message, I guess, to the government. In the meantime, donations are great, and endowments are great, but you can do a lot with spaghetti dinners, but it's a process, and that does help fix your timeline. You know, if those things don't come together, then it takes it longer.
Not to be discouraging, but the Caledon home, we took almost 10 years to build, but we had nothing to begin with. So we had to raise money and get grants to do the development work. We had to get all those plans in place. And then one day, the federal and provincial government said, we've got a building plan for our municipalities, for the regions, and we were shovel ready. So we were able to get probably about 90% of the cost through one of their programs to build the resident. So it was happen chat. Now we're looking at the second one in Caledon at the moment.
I should tell the story about Durham just a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
And by the way, David, I see you, and David, I see you.
Sorry, I'll let you do that, because we'll just keep talking.
Let's go to them. We'll come back to this one.
Oh, come back to it. Okay, David Leroy, could you join us? There you are.
Hi, sorry, I've been hiding my face here on this call, working from home today, a bit disheveled. But I'm a ward councillor in Scugog, and I have a great interest in what Abbeyfield has been doing. And so thank you for this presentation. I would love to have a bit more information on the financial aspects of it. And maybe that's something that can be sent later, or something that we can have another chat about. So just a couple questions with regard to that. I'm curious about the 100-year lease that you secured in Caledon. I'm also curious about how you went about your purpose-built building in Durham. Both these things tie into a third question about your property portfolio, where you've mentioned only 4 have mortgages. So presumably you could leverage that portfolio to unleash capital for other projects. That's a common approach in other social housing models. So I'm interested to know if you have considered that. So all of this I'm coming at with the perspective of, we may have a parcel that might be suitable for this kind of development, trying to understand the funding and model that might work in this particular case. So thank you to Ivo and others for setting up this call. It's been very interesting to hear what you have shared. I'm hoping to learn more. And I think one of your colleagues was actually getting a little more into some of these questions a minute ago before I opened my big mouth.
Let me just talk about Durham in particular. We incorporated in 1998. We moved in December 2002. And what happened was we found a developer who built the property as we wanted as a turnkey. So they did the front work of that, and that saved such a big stress for us. And then 3 of our residents or founders at that point, when they sold their houses, they life leased 3 of their units. So they each invested about $62,000 each of them. And then that gave us a mortgage. We needed to go to the credit union to move ahead with a proper mortgage. Though we still use that life lease model for people who do want to invest. And then we're the only ones in Canada that are doing that model right now. But it did move things fast a lot quicker than some of the other groups.
Very good. David McCauley, the floor is yours.
I just wanted to add a little bit to what Joe said and Rhonda and Peter. Just as an architect who's built a lot of buildings for not-for-profits. And I don't want to get your hopes up as far as the schedule is concerned, but I've been involved in a lot of co-housing projects, and it's you can usually use a round term of about 10 years, and I think you're really looking at that. A few things that you can use to accelerate the process and save some time and certainly get better to a reasonable budget on that would be to ask the school board, assuming that the school board owns the project. You'd probably want to get as much documentation from them as you could get, and that would be a survey plan and measured drawings of the building and things like that. The other thing you could get going with is a schematic design, which just in terms of renderings and things that can be helpful in visioning the project and get people interested in the project. A few other things that the septic system can be a real problem, or it can be a straightforward thing, but it certainly is going to have to be updated because it probably has been neglected for a period of time.
Not a chance could use that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's.
Sorry,
there's
I thought my
issues
mic was off. I apologize. I'm talking to myself. I apologize.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying.
I'm turning my mic off.
So the other thing that is sometimes an issue too is an environmental study. So if there had been an oil tank on the project and things like that, chances are they had a fuel oil tank for heating. You'd have to get an environmental phase 1 at least. And the other thing is the designated substances, just in case there happens to be asbestos or lead in the building. You'd want to get a handle on that so you can estimate what the cost is for remediation of any of those things. So those are just a few things. I don't want to complicate the process, but it is costly and it does take time. And I just want to get up and running with it. So prepare for yourself for some of these things, and then other things that you don't even know about at this point. So those are just some of the things I'd ask you just to underline.
Thank you,
I'm
David.
prepared to ask and answer any other questions too, if you want.
Yeah, you're an expert in that area, so why not? Any other questions?
Can I come back to David 1? What financial information would be helpful? What is it, operating or capital that you're looking at?
So it would be capital for sure,
okay.
Because as I understand it, your operating costs are covered by resident rent.
But yeah, the fees that the residents pay. Yeah. Okay. So it's the capital side of things. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the biggest barrier, I think, to any of these kinds of projects is, getting it off the ground requires money.
Yeah. We have, just to comment on that, the Abbeyfield 2 that we're looking at in Canada, we're looking at land that has been donated to the municipality with the intention of having a urgent care center put on it. It's about 40 acres, so it's quite a bit of land. And we're proposing that we put a couple long-term care homes as well as an Abbeyfield on it. But the long-term care homes will be small homes, 12 individuals in those homes. So it's more of a family model that isn't in Ontario really yet. It's been successful in Alberta, and we have the SE Health, which was the old St. Elizabeth Healthcare, has bought the firm in Alberta, Exquisite Care, and they're proposing to work with us to help develop the next phase here. So you can see it's just another model. I know that there's been some controversy about it, but I think we've got it on top of it.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Peter,
you were asking about leveraging other homes, existing homes to fund future homes. And we've never done that per se yet. It's something we started to look at, and we've all recognized that that probably is the way to go. We recently incorporated, Ontario in that to make a corporation. The homes are all independent, right? And it's a bit of a different thing because you're dealing with a lot of different presidents and different boards and to say separately run organizations. But it's something that we've started to look at and recognize that we've been lax and not, going forward in this area. And it's something we've got to get our heads around, how effectively to do that. But you're absolutely right. The potential is there. We do have equity. We do have, as I say, a number with no mortgages and some with small mortgages. And we just haven't turned that corner yet, but it's something we are looking at for sure.
good.
It's something that Abbeyfield New Zealand has done in the last 5 years. They've actually brought in a housing secondary organization into their fold and have assumed the housing aspect of Abbeyfield. So there are some examples.
Australia too.
Australia too. Yeah, maybe I mixed them up. I often do.
I think they're both true.
How, depending on which province you're in, does that determine the obstacles you're going to face when trying to build one of these?
I can speak to that for a second. No, not to a great degree. I mean, municipalities across Ontario all have different rules and bylaws. They all operate under the Ontario Municipal Act, but still there are many differences within the municipalities. So your differences, from one place to another, can be as unique as your land, as your situation or whatever. So there are differences in BC for sure, dealing with BC housing and different things. There are differences, but, province is just a consideration, not in any way a major one or a differentiating one, really.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, it was very thorough. And I think somebody, I don't know, Ivo, I think you kind of got this going, but that concept of giving others a track to run on, providing a sort of instruction on the phases that you need to go through. Because when we first see this Abbeyfield model, we go, well, that's lovely, but my goodness, how do you get there? And I mean, I certainly understand that it's going to take time. The reality is, I mean, some of the faces at this table aren't necessarily going to have the energy to continue to do this for another 10 years. Just saying. But if you're working on a model of some sort for people like us to follow, that's really helpful. And I get the sense that if we were to call you and ask you for some advice, you'd be happy to give it.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
And we would welcome a visit to any of the homes in Ontario if you want to arrange. We're certainly open to that. We do it all the time, so it's quite happy.
You mentioned that the other day, Joe, and then that's where we kind of started. And Ivo and Rita and Marty will remember we were in a meeting where we were talking about when we would go to the Caledon home. So it is definitely something we want to do, because it's one thing to see it in a slide presentation.
Yeah.
It's something else to see it in action.
Yeah,
absolutely. You definitely should do that. It's a very important step for sure.
Okay.
Now, could I ask a question?
Of course.
Sorry, my power went out in the house here, so I had to go on my phone right in the middle of that meeting. the concept of Abbeyfield, I presume it's a concept, but does the central organization have any control over each of the different houses? Or do they have any input into how it's designed or built or anything else?
Joey, you want to take that?
I guess I could say yes in some ways, not a lot because they're independent boards, but we own the brand. We also, form a membership with each home, and we, indicate, following the principles and values that we want. There's a membership fee for our homes in across the country, and a lot of it. Our concern right now is a lot about what happens if it doesn't get successful and we've got investment in it. Or how does that deal? So there is some of that. I can tell you at the international level, we have a World Council, Abbeyfield World Council, which holds the brands pretty much everywhere except Canada. But they're at the stage where they're not now sort of trying to advance some further advance the principles a bit, So it's more of a supportive empowerment kind of relationship than it is a controlling one, I would say.
Correct. And I just jump in for 1 second. The idea is the economies of scope and scale in that, right? For example, an insurance program, we have an insurance program whereby, a number of houses were able to reduce their insurance costs because we got together with, one organization where we brought a number of houses on board, and some made significant savings by jumping onto that program. So that's the idea, to be able to come up with economies of scope and scale, and as Joe suggests, support and suggest some conformity along some lines of, of care and process of running in that rather than it is of control, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, if we don't have to reinvent anything, and knowing that every situation will be different depending on the municipality. Ivo, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to say a big thank you. I think I'm going to follow up with Joe and Peter in terms of trying to see what we can do and get that development kit done as soon as possible. And I think there's a lot of enthusiasm here locally. We have what's driving it is a lot. The township is in a process of buying this high school. Not buying it, but they're basically trading the land. So we have some possibilities, right? The question is going to be, what steps should we be doing? And I'll talk to you guys offline. I don't think we need to go through this right now, but we want to talk offline and maybe have that kit sooner rather than later. And we don't mind. I don't mind helping develop it in terms of, the steps that we need to go through. And I just want to make sure that I don't come down and we're about to submit it and oops, you forgot to do the what's the name I mentioned? He says you forgot to do a review of the sewage system. Well, we should have done that day one, right? And we didn't.
Right.
I just need to, it's making sure the boxes are ticked based on your experience, right? So we can work on that. It's not going to be 10 years for us here. I can guarantee you that. Right. I don't have 10 years. Right?
Well, that's excellent.
And
this is where
I'm pretty selfish when it comes to that. I'm looking at, maybe 5 years. Hopefully we can do it sooner than that. But I think David knows that I'm the type of guy that pushes. We did smaller things here, but a lot quicker, right? And we kind of know where to go ask for money. We know some people ask for money, and we know how to word it potentially, but we'll work on it together. I just want to thank you so much for all the information, right? This is an eye-opener. It's a reality check. It's basically getting everybody on the same page sort of deal. So thank you.
Yeah, so just to, if there are no further questions, no further comments that are going to be made, just to remind you, I will share the notes for this and also the slideshow. It might take me a few hours to get there. excuse me. I want to thank Joe and Peter and Rhonda for being here today and sharing their expertise and helping us understand something a little more about the model. And I think maybe giving us some hope that, yes, maybe this is something that we can pursue. So thank you for taking the time. And if you're okay with it, we will share this information wherever we can, because it seems to me it's something that more people need to know about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, super. Thank you all very much
Take
for
care.
attending. Joe, were you gonna, or are you just waving? Okay,
Just waving.
yeah. Well, thank you all. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.